Today on the Clean Power Hour, Elon Musk explains why rooftop solar is so affordable. And my co-host, John Weaver, is buying a Tesla. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, Tim, how are you? Thanks for that announcement. I like
Sorry, I had
that.
to let the cat out of the bag.
Yep. I haven't told too many people yet. I wanted to post a picture first, but I guess this is a way for it to get out there.
It's good to support Tesla. It's good to support electrification of transportation. That is the future. That is the way to decarbonize transportation. It is so clear. I've been really drilling down on battery technology. I've been totally geeking out on a YouTube channel called The Limiting Factor. Our viewers should check it out. I don't know the host's name, but he's really smart and he dives hardcore into the technical literature on batteries and battery production. And it's mind-boggling. Good stuff happening. So today on the Clean Power Hour, we are going to talk about, as usual, the energy transition. As usual, solar and storage. We're going to get some floating solar in there. We're going to get some, robots. Love the robot stories.
Yep.
What would you like to talk about first, John?
Well, I mean, how about we talk about Google? The fact that Google is now, we'll make a quick one,
Yeah.
but Google is now, instead of just talking about offsetting their electricity usage with clean, they're talking about CO2 free 24/7. And what that means is that somebody's using batteries somewhere, and it's solar plus storage and wind plus storage. And I love the fact that big corporate is now forcing us forward into these next phases of solar power, of renewable, of this transition. My car that I'm buying, it's got batteries, and those batteries make it the magical thing that it is. And Google going 24/7 renewable electricity on a market level, on a global market level, is something significant. Because right now, people can say, what happens when the sun goes down? And you're like, yeah, you're right. I did offset my credits. I make extra in the daytime, and truly I'm using the grid at night. But Google wants to get rid of that argument. And I love watching Google do it, because they're going to set rules that corporations around the globe are going to follow. And this is pretty cool, pretty neat to watch happen.
Yeah, so let's break down the difference. They've been carbon neutral apparently since 2007, meaning they're offsetting their carbon footprint, right, with clean power. And now they're saying we are going to run all of our facilities globally, all these massive data centers. And if you don't know this, data centers use something like 10 to 20% of our power globally now, I think. It's a massive suck of power. And it's for a good cause. We have the internet now, and we have e-commerce, and there's no turning back until the robots take over our lives. But they're now pledging to do this by 2030, which is wonderful. And you and I both know, John, that this is a big move, but it's actually totally doable.
No questions asked. Especially for an individual corporation within the bigger machine that has the profits and the resources and the IQ, so to say. I mean, within Google, they have probably some of the best energy-related minds globally. They're just, they have employees whose whole career it is to be efficient with energy. And by 2030, no questions asked. I love it. Thank you, Google. I'm going to keep using your search engine, even though you know every single thing about me in my entire life. But you get some credit here today from me.
Yeah, I'm increasingly critical of the big tech companies for tracking us and tracking everything we do and knowing everything about us, and then monetizing that, and then disrupting our society. Feeding the dissension and the politics. Facebook. Honestly, I think they're evil. They could change the algorithm, and they don't. And they allow political advertising. At least Twitter stopped political advertising all across the board, right? So, I mean, me and my friends were just quaking in our boots about what's going to happen in November. No matter who wins, there's going to be unrest in the streets, it seems like. And we don't have time for that. We need to get busy with the energy transition. We can't be cleaning up from riots. Um, that's just not acceptable for such an intelligent species as ours. Um, I guess that's a question mark.
Yeah. Gotta hammer forward. These tech companies, they have power. They're a new species of company, of idea on this planet, and we, the active animal, need to learn how to integrate them. My company runs on Google. My laptop's Google. My phone is Google. My website's hosted via Google. So it's like they know all the data. Google Drive has every piece of information. If they really wanted to mine things, the super hive mind probably already exists hiding from us humans within the Google network, just because it knows that we'll unplug it if we discover it. So that's my global conspiracy theory. The alien is us.
Yep, the alien is us, and so we have to be good aliens. We have to be good stewards. We have to be good to each other. We're on the precipice of a radical transformation or collapse, and history shows us that civilizations have a tendency to peak and then collapse, and the period of time between peaking and collapsing can be very short. So just when you think you've arrived, so to speak, which is kind of how I think humanity feels about itself, we feel pretty special. And but we have to be very careful.
Got a lot more work to do.
A lot of work. Well, hey, I wanted to harken back to a story that is not new. This one that I'm going to share on screen doesn't have a date on it, but it's an article that Jeffrey Sachs wrote. He's a professor at Columbia University, a brilliant economist, and he's really interested in sustainability and has written books about sustainability. The article is called, let me get it on screen, Getting to a Carbon-Free Economy. And I would encourage all of our viewers and listeners to check this article out. If you just Google Jeffrey Sachs, you'll find his website, and he has all these things. He was also featured on Chris Nelder's The Energy Transition Show, which is a wonderful podcast. If anybody has not checked that out yet, Chris Nelder, he's a former NREL employee. I'm not sure where he works now. But he does this show dedicated to the energy transition, and he interviews all kinds of entrepreneurs and academics, and he takes a deep dive into the scientific literature and thinking of the day. So anyway, getting to a carbon-free economy, he references the Green New Deal, which is just about, putting several $1 trillion into the economy to speed the transition to a clean energy future. And, as you and I have discussed on this show, there's a myriad of points now of legitimate evidence showing that we can do this. And with today's technology, we don't need to wait for tomorrow. We don't need to wait for 50% efficient solar cells, if that's even possible. And I just want to touch on the pillars. Zero carbon electricity, of course, right? That's something like 40% of emissions globally. Electrification of end uses, so like heating and cooling, doing heating and cooling with heat pumps. We've touched on that. That's going to be a topic that is going to increasingly go mainstream, right? Green synthetic fuels, that makes flying carbon free potentially. And, we can't electrify large airplanes. We can electrify small airplanes. I heard a story recently, John, that Norway has put a stake in the ground that all in-country flights will be electric by, I think, 2035 or 2040. They're really going after electrification of air travel. So
That's cool.
And then the fourth pillar, a smart power grid. Yeah, we have a super dumb power grid today. Um, and it falls apart easily. It catches fire. It, yeah, so many problems. It's totally hackable, as the Russians have demonstrated. And so, yeah, we need a smart grid, for so many reasons, right? As we bring storage mainstream, there's a huge need for a truly smart grid. And then fifth pillar, energy efficiency. Of course, the negawatt is the lowest hanging fruit, just making all of our built environment more efficient. All right, John, thanks for listening to that monologue. Um, any thoughts about Jeffrey Sachs before we go, before we leave him?
I mean, I've read this article, and it's a good article, and I think the key is that we really need some good, proper financial education. There's been research for 5 years that I've been already seeing saying, listen, this transition will be a net savings to the country, to the species, to the planet. And this is even before we consider things like the massive environmental costs we're going to have. And I think if people just sort of got it through their thick, lazy skulls that these numbers are fundamentally different than what they're hearing on the whack news stations, that things just start to shift. But that's a fight, and it's never easy. So that the financial job is already done. Now it's just about deploying it and getting better.
Yep. Sachs points out that the incremental costs of decarbonization above our normal energy costs will amount to 1 to 2% of US GDP per year during the period to 2050. By contrast, during World War II, federal outlays soared to 43% of GDP from pre-war level of 10% of GDP in 1940. So it took us 10 to 40% of our GDP to beat Hitler, which was a massive initiative, massive, right? In a period of a year, we converted automobile factories to airplane and bomb factories. But we need to fight climate change with an equal force. And right now, we're just completely dancing around the edges. But the good news is that we only need 2% of GDP. You know, to green the economy. And like, how can you argue against that?
Well, there's many ways to argue against anything. I mean, I think Robert F. Kennedy said, no matter what you put out there, 20% of people will be against it. So,
Right.
don't sell short the naysayers. They're experts at naysaying. They will
Yeah.
naysay everything. So
Yep.
we can do it. That's not the question. We can do it. The question is, will we?
Okay, dealer's choice. You pick a story.
Well, I think it's let's chat about Elon real fast. Why
Yeah.
his modules are priced that way, and actually look at his numbers. And first off, the numbers that he said are a little bit funny, but
Right.
otherwise it's mostly okay. He said modules cost 50 cents a watt. Modules don't cost 50 cents. They cost I just got a quote today from REC Solar
Yeah.
for 380, and for shipping container volume out of New Jersey, 32 cents. I saw
Right.
some Jaw Solar, 29 or 32 cents as well. Some HT Solar, which is a new manufacturer out of Turkey, 29.5 cents for residential modules.
Yeah.
So, that's the one detail on it that I thought was funny, but maybe he's looking at it different. But otherwise, you see the pure hardware costs, and you see it from his stance as a marketing expert. He doesn't need to sell commissions for salespeople. He doesn't have the issues that Sunrun does, where Sunrun and all these door knockers, they have to pay 30, 40, 50, 60 cents a watt for commission and for sales and for business development. And that's what drives one thing that drives up residential solar quite a bit in the United States is that sales process.
Yeah. We call
And
that the soft costs, and Tesla doesn't have to spend on marketing. They don't do advertising. And they do have salespeople. It says they don't have to spend heavily on salespeople. I'm not sure how that works. But
They're
anyway,
less salespeople versus order takers. Salespeople get big commissions because they might not get paid for a month. Order takers get a nice base salary, sit in an office, and take incoming calls. That's what happens at Tesla. Tesla, I didn't go to a car lot and get hammered by a salesperson. I called Tesla. I said, "Hi, I'd like to give you, $60,000." And they're like, "Great, let's do the order." There was no commissions there. There was just
mhm.
Elon Musk being nutty and crazy on the internet, getting everybody's attention.
What color Tesla are you getting?
I'm getting the gray one with the
Mhm.
standard wheels that are 19 inches because I saw that going a little bit bigger lowers efficiency.
Yep.
And so it's the Model Y, the gray model. And I
Yep.
think it's metallic silver is what the name of it is, but I just
Cool.
kind of liked it.
Right on. Yeah. So Tesla is selling solar at $1.50. That's after the ITC,
Yeah.
the investment tax credit of 26%. And, they're, they're, they're doing, I think, a little funny business with the numbers, but anyway, it's a good thing. They're 70 cents at face value here, lower than the national average. I was curious to learn that Arizona is the cheapest state in the US for rooftop solar. It's $1.85 on average in Arizona. I
Okay.
didn't know that. I mean, I knew Arizona was a relatively mature market, but that's a pretty darn good price for rooftop solar. I'm going to have to rib my Arizona friends uh, for not going solar because that's pretty freaking affordable.
Generally, though, Arizona has cheap electricity and no incentives, low or no incentives, as well a lot of limitations on the solar net metering. The FBI has investigated a couple of Arizona utilities for making
Yeah.
for certain things, and even the Supreme Court ruled against an Arizona uh, tax on solar power. So it's a complex state, but they have some of the best sunlight on the planet. So, cheap electricity or a cheap install and great sunlight. Everybody should be able to install solar there.
Yep. So there was a story that Costa Nicolau brought to my attention, and that is a story about a company called Terabase.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this on screen, and I don't fully understand this yet, but it's something that we will be reporting on on the show here in the coming months and years. I have a feeling because Terabase, well, they got a $6 million round of funding to deliver ultra cheap solar. And what is ultra cheap solar, John?
1 cent per kilowatt hour.
That is a magic number in solar. Right now, I think the last episode we talked about $1.34 PPA in Portugal, and some of the projects in the U.S. are knocking on that door as well, getting into the low dollar and change. But now these guys are explicitly going after the 1 cent mark. 6 former SunPower employees is the founding team, apparently, and they are creating proprietary software, automation, and deployment solutions for utility scale projects, working along EPCs, developers, and independent power producers. So I don't doubt that there's room with software and automation. Of course, we also need to bring down the cost of technology and commerce. Tariffs are not helping us right now in the solar industry. So
In the U.S., they're not, but in other places, they don't have those tariffs. They're doing great without them. So
yeah,
this company, I like the concept. I don't know technically because I'm not a utility scale guy, so I don't know exactly the stresses in design. But in my company, we're small. We really have 3 employees right now. We're looking to hire a fourth, and I am the business development manager, and so I have to do rough designs and rough financial models. And with tools like Helioscope and Energy Toolbase, I can, in 20 minutes, in a perfect world where I know the market, can output a gorgeous proposal. One chunk of it will be very technical, show generations, show all the hardware. The other portion will be very financial and show the legal structure, and bam, there's a proposal. And the ability to do that is probably worth an employee, because I bet back in the day you had another salesperson supporting two or three other salespeople doing proposals, doing layouts, doing rough designs. And I remember when I first started in it, it was always, we'll figure it out. Here's a rough system sizing, and we have to send someone out, and we have to do this, and it'll take us a week or two to get back, and we need to talk to engineering. And now John Fitzgerald Weaver or Adam Gent, the gentleman who runs the residential thing, he can put together a proposal that's 98% right within 10 minutes while you're on the phone initially having a consultation. And so I can see where Terabase is coming from, that their software tools will help lower the cost, will make design better, will make the process faster. I don't know it because I'm not a utility scale guy, but I see how software tools are awesome. And like Helioscope and Energy Toolbase, two great pieces of software that I'm used to using on the CNI space. And good luck to Terabase.
Yep. So you posted on Twitter a story, which I'm going to share here, about a company called Groundworks.
Yeah.
And these guys apparently make heavy equipment for all kinds of solar related industries, including what you see here in this little animation, a automated pile driving system. But I was just looking at their website, which I'll put on screen, and here's their pile drivers. So it looks like they sell traditional pile drivers as well as some autopilot pile drivers. Is that what this is? Autopilot?
Sort of. I mean, roboticized, and you can see that the placer right there in the lower right, that orange machine that's on the top row.
Right.
But any of these pile drivers, any of the advanced ones, you can upload a CAD file that has latitude, longitude associated with where the piles should be in the field. And these units are much better than a human being with their thumb up, feeling the wind, and
Right.
they work great. And I think it's a great concept that for utility scale. So imagine Terabase. They write their software, and their software has a spot within, a centimeter of where every single unit should be. And then that software is optimized to output to this type of hardware. So that instead of having a human being going through all the process, you have a designer making it, and that designer is going straight to the contractor who's deploying it, who's showing up with machines, typing in some data. They got a Wi-Fi connection. Everything syncs with the geolocation. And then bam, machines just start moving. And instead of having human beings out there doing that complex labor, or this not so complex labor, really, you have machines doing it. Dan Sugar of Nextracker, I saw this because of him. He commented on the post from the manufacturer and said, "Hey, great idea. Why don't you make it into one machine?" And that's pretty cool. And I expect to see more robotic installation techniques in the utility scale space, especially on these large, perfect, flat locations. I mean, that's where you use a robot. The simplest world is where you can best use a robot today.
Yeah, I totally agree that this robotization, automation is going to be critical for our industry to bring down the soft costs. There's so much growth in energy that we can afford to automate, and we're still going to hire hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And that's true for manufacturing as well, like the gigafactories or the Terrafactories. They're starting to call them Terrafactories because they have so much growth potential. And it's a good thing. I mean, while it looks kind of fun to be an operator of a pile driver, I bet it gets old fast.
You know what? I got buddies of mine who drive various machines in fields, and I think that's the happiest place in the world for them because they don't have to deal with the rest of us animals 9 to 5. They can just go out and build stuff.
Yeah.
I think there will be certain folks who are heartbroken to get away from the job, but you know, it's the nature of the evolution of us and the machine and everything else. So
We're going to cover a few more stories, but I wanted to remind our viewers that the Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. You can check us out at cesnrg.com. Our podcast there is there at /podcast. And then check us out on YouTube. We have some great content coming your way. Costa Nicolaou's interview is coming out this Thursday. He is the CEO of Panel Claw, which is the #1 rooftop racking company in the US. And they are gunning for disrupting the rooftop industry with something called Claw OS. So you can look forward to that. Of course, we have the Clean Power Hour, solar PV news there. I interview solar experts like John Delury at Vote Solar, like Brian Haug at Continental Energy Solutions, like Kelsey Misbrenner. So many great interviews. So please check us out, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and please hit that bell for the energy transition. All right, John. So what else would you like to talk about today? We have
yeah, there's
5 to
always
10
something to
minutes.
talk about. Always something to talk about. So much news in this industry. So many nuances. So many layers. How about that floating solar? It's still a very small niche, but floating solar has officially broken 2 gigawatts of capacity. That's a nice, healthy, chunky number. This graph here shows the progression. The majority of it's located in right now in Asia, Southeast Asia, with of course China pushing it. But I like the concept of floating solar. There's even ocean-based solar being developed right now in
Right.
Northern Europe, the Netherlands, I think. They're hoping to couple floating solar with wind, not in single structures. There's different ideas, but right now there's literally just straight solar panels with their own unique raft structure. And the concept is if you've got the infrastructure in place already for a bunch of wind, maybe it's smart to have some floating solar nearby it, let them be complementary. And you've already got this big area that you're making use of. It'd be interesting to watch. I like this concept of floating solar. NREL says the US could get 10% of our electricity, hypothetically, if we maximize it. And, people who have like a little lake out back, it doesn't take that many floating solar panels to cover a house. It's interesting. I like this concept of floating solar. Another niche, another unique, interesting niche.
Yeah, it looks like this research was brought to us by Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore. Singapore is a very interesting place. It's right there in Southeast Asia, and so it's on the edge of major solar manufacturing and installation country. And but what that triggered for me was that there's a very savvy CEO named Assad Razouk, who's based in Singapore. He owns an EPC, among other things, and he has a wonderful podcast called The Angry Clean Energy Guy. And I flashed that on the screen there a few minutes ago, but check that out. The Angry Clean Energy Guy, Assad Razouk, very thoughtful guy, and coming to us from Singapore. So good stuff.
I like, Singapore right now, they're seemingly talking with a group of Australian developers, solar developers, who are working on what I think is the single largest solar plant in the world,
Yeah.
as well the single largest battery. 10 gigawatts of solar,
Yep.
30 gigawatt hours of energy storage, and a 3,800 kilometer underwater electric cable going from northern Australia to Singapore, crossing in between Indonesia. I just love the scale of it. It's such a, oh man, awesome. Australia, you guys are doing great. Love it.
So let's wrap up with your story from Twitter about PG&E, and I will share my screen here. So what's the story, John?
It's So there's two stories. The overall one is that we're still discovering what happened in California during their heat wave that led to that Friday night, Saturday night, the brownouts, the blackouts that occurred for a few 100,000 people during a heat wave. And of course, there's large chunks of the population who love to immediately complain about solar power and renewables and wind and intermittent, saying, okay, all of this stuff that these people are doing is bad. This is their fault that this occurred. Solar power, dang it, what's going on? But the reality is the grid is a tough thing. Gas plants didn't start up. Imports didn't materialize from states east of California because they were under their own heat wave. And what may have actually also happened is that some professional within the PG&E, the Pacific Gas and Electric Utility, may have incorrectly told a power plant to lower output instead of increasing its output. And that's like, oops, that's a fossil fuel generator from a utility manager making a major mistake. And
is it just human error, or is there some suspicion that this is nefarious activity?
Well, I'm sure there's always suspicion. I have no idea. I have no insight. I'm just a guy who reads stuff on the internet from California. Could there have been? Yeah, absolutely. Could this have been the next Enron? Yeah. I also heard that some electricity trader up in Oregon messed up trading so badly in California that he may have cost that utility $100 million because of the way they did trades this summer. And so I don't know. I mean, there could be fraud, but I'm not going there. At minimum, somebody fat-fingered 400 megawatts of electricity, making an 800 megawatt delta. So going from X down 400 instead of up means you're almost a gigawatt off of the demand in a certain chunk of a region. Oh man, if that occurred, then I think the people who were like, whoa, what about solar? And I had one of these morons yelling at me this morning on the internet, and I just responded and just like, shut up. This is go away. Like, for instance, I included that link to PV Magazine for a reason. People are like, oh, it's the intermittence. Where was solar power at 7 p.m.? Well, first off, the sun is down, so please stop talking. But more importantly, there are 6 or 7 states that have more intermittent electricity generation than California. The key with California's generation, intermittent, is that it's the most predictable thing that this species has, the rising of the sun. We can highly predict when the sun will rise and how much solar will get generated. So it's highly predictable. Wind isn't. And it's not the solar that caused the brownouts. It could be literally a big fat finger combined, of course, with literal, potentially the hottest temperatures ever recorded on Earth as a human being. So I just wanted to bring that up because I want people to know how complex and tough running the largest machine on the planet is, what people call the Eastern power grid. It's tough. And to quickly respond and say, ooh, boo, solar, that makes you look foolish. Do some more homework. This is a big game. This is a big machine. We're smart. We know when the sun comes up. Better than anything in the world. Sorry, that was my rant. You got my rant for the week. Thanks, Tim. Got that off my chest. That helps.
Next week, I want to talk about a company called Block Energy that's making microgrids for utilities. And, but I also wanted to comment about people who comment about the periodicity of solar. Of course, yes, we only get electricity from sunlight when the sun is shining. The good news is the sun is always shining somewhere on Earth. And in 1 hour, enough sunlight hits the Earth to power society for an entire year. So we only have to capture a very small amount of that in order to truly run society. And of course, once we crank up the Terrafactories of batteries, which is totally in the works now and totally within our grasp. I mean, lithium, which is one of the main ingredients of modern batteries, right, is a super abundant resource. It's the 3rd most common element in the universe. And so we have lots of lithium. There are some rare materials that are scarce, but for the most part, we have tons and tons and tons of the stuff that goes in batteries. So you think about today, it's in our smartphone, it's in our car. You know, tomorrow it's a big one in the garage. It's a big one in the car or the truck. It's a really big one down the block, you know, where there today is just a substation. Tomorrow there's a substation with a few gigawatts of storage there as well, right? And then we're
Yeah,
rocking and rolling.
I'm about to get a 70 kilowatt hour battery of my own.
You're gonna buy a Powerwall? What are you buying?
Now I'm buying a Model Y. It's got
Oh,
a
right.
70 kilowatt hour battery in it. I got I got the all-wheel drive longer distance one, not the performance one. I don't need a fast car anymore. I need to drive like an old guy. But now I'm happy, you know. I called my mom. I'm like, "Hey mom, I just bought a Tesla." She goes, "Oh, Johnny, good boy." I was very happy.
70 kilowatt hours.
You know what? I have no idea. You know, it's funny. I'm not a car guy. I could give two. I just don't care about cars. It's not my thing. But
Yeah.
I'm happy that I got this car. So I'll make sure I have more details for you next week, Tim. So I can.
Yeah, let's geek out on the size of the batteries in EVs, and it's a good thing. We're all going to be geeking out on batteries eventually, so we may as well geek out right now.
We already are. I mean, I got a laptop and a cell phone and I got one of these guys, which is pretty cool. I always carry this around with me whenever I go work on my laptop and cell phone.
Yep.
This is a 2600 milliamps. This is enough to recharge my phone and my laptop 2, maybe 3 times in a single afternoon if I'm that far away from recharging. Batteries everywhere, man. All kinds of batteries.
Batteries equal freedom.
There you go. Freedom.
All right, John. Well, that was a great show. Thanks for being my co-host. And I am Tim Montague, your co-host of the Clean Power Hour. Let's grow solar. We'll see you next week, John.
Have a great day, Tim. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.